I'm going to call the Audit and Finance Committee meeting to order. We have a couple housekeeping items. This meeting is being live streamed. Ms. Meads, I can't see if you raise your hand, so feel free to speak up if you'd like to be recognized. Members of the public participating remotely may use the raise hand feature in Zoom. If you're using a phone and like to comment, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. We'll take public comment first from those who are here in person and submitted a comment card, followed by those who raised hands on Zoom. Do we have any in-person or Zoom comments?
Not at this time.
Okay. Let's move on to approval of the minutes. These are the approval of minutes for the April 13th, 2023 meeting. Are there any changes to the April 13th, 2023 meeting minutes?
No, I have none.
Thank you. If not, can I have a motion?
I move to approve.
Thank you, and I second the motion. I'll call the question. Ms. Meads?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and that passes. That vote passes. I'm going to call Ms. Weinberg up for a summary of investments as of the end of July 20. That should say 23.
23.
Yeah, on my page.
Okay. Good afternoon. So I will be giving a portfolio update through July 31st, 2023. And I will demonstrate in my presentation that as a result of the abrupt and significant increase in rates, as well as the increase in district expenditures, that we've had to change how we invest and how we manage our portfolio. So first I'll discuss the market environment. The current Fed funds rate is at 5.25% to 5.5%. The last increase was in July. Additional rate increases are possible in 2023. That's basically the feeling out there in the market if inflation doesn't drop by enough. Rates have increased substantially by 550 basis points since March of 2022, which is huge. That's when Fed began raising rates from virtually zero. This is both good and bad from a district perspective. We are earning higher interest on our liquid overnight funds, which is fantastic, but on the long-term bonds, those are hold to maturity. So those have been significantly written down quarter by quarter by quarter. That's not realized, that's unrealized, that's just a mark to market that we do internally. But this will turn around when rates steady next year. US growth is slow and expected to decline to 1.8% in 2023 and 1% in 2024. Global growth is expected to decrease to 3.5% to 3% in 2023 and 2024. And consumer price index hit a peak of 9.1% in June of 22, and it dropped to 3.7% in August of 23. Now, currently the Fed is projecting a rate decrease to 4.6% by 2024 and 3.4% by the end of 2025. And settling at 2.5% for the long term. Now, the Fed cuts will possibly start in the third quarter of 2024, and this can happen as early as May of 2024. Now, with the Fed carefully monitoring the economic situation, we are likely to avoid a recession based on the American Bankers Economic Advisory Committee. The Fed is expecting inflation to decline to just about 2% in 2024. Which is what their target rate is. Okay, investment strategy. We currently began investing in the Goldman Sachs Financial Squares Money Market Fund, which offers us a daily liquidity to fund AP and payroll, as well as offers a competitive yield of 5.21%. They're AAA rated, and we have until 4:45 every day to invest. We usually don't know our AP and payroll numbers until late in the day. So this allows us to actually have a real number to work with and we know what we need to fund and what we can invest for additional earnings. So this is a lot better option than leaving money in the operating account at 1%. And as discussed in our last Audit and Finance Committee meeting, our strategy is to keep a minimum daily balance of $5 million in the operating account to maintain a tight cash forecast, to garner a high yield on a daily basis by investing in these short-term funds at over 5%, all while maintaining daily liquidity and being able to fund operating expenses. Now, as mentioned in the last slide, the average coupon on the bond portfolio is 1.34%. In a 5% environment on bonds, this leads to a large mark-to-market write-down. But again, this will reverse as rates decrease. We also have maturities in 2025. I looked it up right before this meeting. We have $3.4 million maturing in 2025 and $80 million maturing in 2026. Now, I know that's a far ways out, and we don't know what rates are going to do then, but all of those maturities, the 80 million, will mature at par, meaning no losses will be taken. And then we have 35 million maturing in 2027. And our total interest earnings through July are 8.3 million, and we are estimating 9.5 million through the end of the fiscal year. And I believe we budgeted 3.7 million. This slide gives us a clear visual of key interest rates. The 10-year Treasury is earning less at 3.97% than an overnight money market fund of 5.39%. That's definition of an inverted yield curve. This is why in this environment we're investing and taking advantage of the yields on the short term, earning the income while it's available to us without taking any unnecessary long-term risk, because why would we go out 10 years in a Treasury when we can have overnight funds at a significant increase in basis points? This is a high-level snapshot. As of July 31st, we have earned 8.3 million, as mentioned. Our book yield on investments only is 1.57%. The book yield on cash and investments is 2.13%. Now, the funny thing about these numbers is typically book yield will be higher when it's just investments compared to when I include cash, because cash is usually so low that it does what's called a cash drag, and it drags that yield down. But this is completely opposite. Including cash actually brought that number up. So it's not what we're used to typically seeing. Cash alone is earning 4.4%. This is a weighted average of our money market funds along with our operating account, which is the 1%, so that's the cash drag there. We are 81% invested and 19% in cash and cash equivalents. Now, this is a high number, or a high percentage, not because we made any new investments, but rather because of the spend down in cash, so the percentages are skewed. But this is what we always expect at fiscal year end due to increased expenditures. Now, usually our target is 70-30, 70% invested, 30% in cash and cash equivalents. However, in this inverted yield environment, we will be heavy in the short term once we start receiving ad valorem funds on November 15th. This is just a schedule of our portfolio breakdown. We've had our portfolio balance as of 7/31 is $383 million. And just as a quick reminder, we were at $554 million when I presented last, which was as of December 31st, 2022. We have significantly decreased the operating account to 16.7 million. And as mentioned earlier, it is now even further decreased to $5 million. Any excess at the end of the day is invested into the new Goldman Sachs money market fund, which we just recently opened in August. We have decreased the federated balance and the SBA balance. Both are currently zero because the Goldman Sachs is a lot flexible for us. This slide shows our benchmark comparisons. This is presented always every quarter as of 6/30 because we mark to market and we run our benchmarks quarterly. Our book yield on cash only is 4.4% versus the 5.08 benchmark. Again, that's because we have 16.7 million in the operating account, or we did as of July. at 1%, causing that drag. On the long-term side, we see a low book yield of 2.13% due to the older investments that we purchased before the uptick in rates. We did a lot of our investing between 2020 and 2022 when rates were virtually zero. So our yields are anywhere between 1 to 1.5%, very low. When we compare ourselves to the 1 to 3 year Treasury index, which you can see is at 4.98%, the one important thing to note when comparing ourselves against an index like this is that they can ride that yield curve up and earn these high returns. So they're basically where the market is, but they don't have to cover operating expenses like we do at the district. And with that, are there any questions?
Thanks, Ms. Weinberg.
You're welcome.
Good presentation.
Thank you.
And Cheryl, do you have any, Ms. Mead, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not.
Okay. I just had a few. So I guess a couple times you mentioned the mark to market. So I appreciate you mentioning that on our investment portfolio and also clarifying for the record that these are held to maturity. And so while we are marking these to market for internal purposes, they should mature at par, and that variance will decrease with maturity. And then on the I wanted on the cash management, because I know it's a lot more work. Appreciate you guys doing a lot more managing of the daily balances.
Yes.
Because if you weren't doing that, the difference between the 1% on your account, which account is that? That's the
operating account.
The operating account,
Operating
and the
account, yes.
and the 5.2 on the money market is significant. So thanks for continuing to do that. And I'm glad to hear that new money market fund is a little bit easier to manage for you guys. And then on the cash amount, as ad valorem comes in, where our target is typically 30% cash, and where I agree that you would range up on that because of the short-term rates. Do you need any approval from the committee to range beyond 30%, or what is the parameter on the cash component?
We do not need approval. What we're going to do is continue doing our cash forecast and our daily cash forecast, and just see as the funds come in. We get a little bit in between November 15th and November 30th. The majority comes in December. And so we're just going to put that on the short term, just because that's where the yield is, and two, we need the funds.
Okay.
So the last thing we want to do is lock up funds again and then not have access to them.
Agreed. Okay, thank you. Molly, is there any public comment?
We have none, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thanks, Ms. Weinberg. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll call Mr. Behrens to present the audit of the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, land acquisition cost share.
Just as a little background, the Water Resource Development Act of 2000 is where the framework was established for SERP. The objective being to restore the quantity, quality, time, and the distribution of water for the natural systems, as well as continue to provide flood control water for the millions of people in South Florida. It's an integrated federal state project. It requires a 50-50 cost share. The Corps is the federal sponsor and the district is the local sponsor. The cost, there's a master agreement, and then each project has its own project partnership agreement. The master agreement covers matters that are applicable to all the projects. And also it covers the costs such as construction management and monitoring and things like land acquisition that's non-tract specific that would apply to all projects and not a specific tract of land. The creditability is subject to the Corps' review and approval. A project partnership agreement is when those PPAs are executed for each specific project. And the costs that are incurred for that specific project, such as the land interest, the construction, and the cost management, those costs are credited as the PPAs are executed. We also do what's called pre-partnership agreements so we can secure that eligibility for some of those expenses we have to incur prior to the PPA being executed. The creditability is also subject to the Corps' review and approval. So our audit objective of this audit was to determine that our process ensures that we request credit for all the eligible SERP projects, land acquisition cost and the related expenses, and also to ensure that they're adequately supported, that we maintain that documentation because we will have to submit that to the Corps for them to approve the credit. The one thing to note, we did an audit a couple years ago of the non-land cost. We did this as a separate audit because there's a totally different process that has to be used for the land. Specifically because of the nature of real estate, we have to be able to accumulate the costs by each tract of land. Essentially, when we have a project, you have the project footprint, and then you have all the different tracts of land that are within or even partially within that footprint. And we have to accumulate those costs by each tract of land when we submit them for credit. So overall, we found that the district has an adequate process in place to ensure that the eligible land acquisition and related expenses and that there is adequate supporting documentation as well. One thing I want to point out is that this audit was sort of a sequel to the audit of the Kissimmee River land cost share audit that we did back in 2018. In that audit, we made 19 recommendations. The reason is because we use the same process. And when we're auditing, we're actually auditing that process. We use the same process for SERP that we used for Kissimmee River, because that was also a 50-50 cost share project with the Corps. The audit, it revealed that by implementing many of those recommendations in that audit, that the process has been significantly improved since that time. 6 land acquisition credit requests have been submitted to the Corps that we looked at during the audit. Just to explain that the Corps, we can't actually request credit until the Corps actually requests us to certify the land to them. So that can sometimes be the constraint as how fast we can submit these for credit. So those 6 requests encompassed about 39,000 acres of land. So far, a total of 92.2 million requests have been submitted. There's an additional about 37.6 thousand acres that the Real Estate Bureau is also working on that have executed partnership agreements. We identified several enhancements additional enhancements to the crediting process. And we also noticed that there is about $16,000 of salary expenses in one of the claims that was also eligible that had not been claimed. So we made 7 audit recommendations in the report, and management concurred with all the recommendations. I'll take your questions now.
Chairman, I don't have any questions, but I am glad to see the improvement. Tim, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ms. Meads. Molly, do we have any public comment?
We have none, Mr. Chairman.
I just was looking at okay, so the 6 credits totaling about 40,000 acres, 39,000 acres, but you said there's still remaining about an equal amount that we're going to request credit on. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
yeah, so those are in process.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
that are
assume that process is a long process?
It can be time consuming. You
Yeah.
want to make any comments on it, Ray? or-
Be very time consuming. We've got to follow the. You gotta get in the
Ray.
mic, Ray, sorry. Is that on?
We follow the Corps' requirements for all of our crediting packages. In the past, we would submit things based on what we thought they needed. But in recent years, we've learned that we just take their checklist and give them exactly in the format that they process. So everything goes much smoother now than it did before.
But, and these could be, I mean, the 38 approximately 1,000 acres could be for land acquisitions that we did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, more like 5 years ago, right?
And the Corps is still working on
Yeah.
those. They have not responded to all of those.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ray. Can I have a motion to approve the audit of the SERP land acquisition cost share?
I move to approve.
Thanks, Ms. Meads. I second. I'll call the question. Ms. Meads? Ms. Meads, I can't.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes. And the audit of the SERP land acquisition cost share passes. Let's see, Molly, any public comment
There are none,
remaining? None?
there are none, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so I'll adjourn.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
just before you adjourn, I just wanted to mention, I'd mentioned to you individually, but I have decided to extend my drop from the 5 to 8 years. My original drop was expiring in November 30th this year, so I've decided to remain with you. So that would extend me out to November 30th of 26.
Terrific. Thanks for mentioning that, Tim. And you had mentioned that to me, but for the record, I appreciate that. Thanks so much. We appreciate your service too. So the Audit and Finance Committee next meets on December 14th here at District Headquarters, and this meeting's adjourned.
Hi, Ms. Roman. Would you like to do a mic check?
Sure, Molly. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Thanks.
The only thing to keep in mind is that we're still live.
afternoon, Molly. This is Ben. You got me?
Mr. Butler, would you like to do a mic check?
Hey, afternoon, Molly.
Thank you. I hear you.
Good day.
Hi, Mr. Wagner. Would you like to do a mic check?
Mic check.
Perfect. We hear you.
Thanks. Are we starting actually at 5:15 or earlier?
We will be starting at 5:15.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Mr. Bergeron. Would you like to do a mic check?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we hear you.
Well, good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, Mr. Martinez. Would you like to do a mic check?
Yes. Hi, I'm here.
Yes, we hear you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's September 26, 2023. I'd like to call the final public hearing on fiscal year 2023-2024 final millage rate and final budget for the South Florida Water Management District to order. First on the agenda is to do the roll call. And we've got some people in the room, some people aren't in the room. Vice Chair Wagner, are you available?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. Mr. Bergeron.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Butler.
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez. Ms. Meads.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Colonel Roman.
I'm here. Good evening.
Thanks. Mr. Steinley. I'm here. And I am here. And Mr. Martinez, are you on? We'll find out when he votes. All right. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance now. If you're in the room and you'd like to stand and face the flag with me, I'll lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Welcome, everyone. This is the public hearing on the final millage rates and budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. This meeting is also being live streamed. Board members, that's Mr. Steinley and myself here in person. I'll ask that we make sure our microphone is on and we speak into the mic so that people can hear us. And for those members on Zoom, I can't see you if you raise your hand, so please speak up and say your name if you'd like to be recognized. Members of the public participating remotely who wish to address the board may use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. And if members of the public are having any trouble and need help, staff is available to help you. Call 561-686-8800 and press 6 for IT support, or go to our website at sfwmd.gov and click the Ask Us button at the top of the page. If you're using a phone and you'd like to comment, plus *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute or to unmute. And we will be taking public comments first from those who are here in person and submitted a comment card, and we'll follow that up by those who raise their hands on Zoom. Are there any revisions to the agenda, Molly?
Mr. Chairman, there were no revisions to the agenda. However, please note that public comment will be taken as part of item number 6.
Noted, thank you. And we're going to go now and ask the board members and poll them to see if there are any abstentions. Start with Vice Chair Wagner. Do you have any abstentions?
None.
Thank you. Mr. Bergeron?
No.
Mr. Butler?
I have none.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez?
None.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez is here. Ms. Meads?
None.
Colonel Roman?
I have none.
Thank you. Mr. Steinley? None. And I have none. There are no abstentions. Public comment will be taken as part of item 6. And now Ms. Heater, our Division Director for Administrative Services, will ask you to present agenda items 6 through 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the second of 2 public hearings required by Chapter 200 Florida statutes to adopt millage rates and a budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. The first public hearing was held Thursday, September 14th at 5:15 p.m. This evening, staff will request action on 6 resolutions. 4 resolutions for the adoption of the final fiscal year 2023-2024 millage rates. 1 resolution adopting the fiscal year 2023-2024 final budget. And after the adoption of the millage rates and budget, we have 1 final resolution pertaining to the state's general appropriations from the fiscal year 2023-2024 and prior fiscal year's budgets. There are strict statutory guidelines that must be followed in adopting final millage rates and budget. The first substantive issue to be discussed is the millage rates necessary to fund the budget, those rates compared to the rolled back rates, and the specific purposes for which ad valorem tax revenues will be used. As part of our discussion this evening, let's review the history of our agency's millage rates in recent years. The district has reduced its millage rates for 12 consecutive years. As illustrated on the slide for the Okeechobee Basin combined millage rate, during the past 12 years, the combined millage rate has decreased over 63%. Even with maintaining the same millage rates being greater than the calculated rolled back rates, the district's millage rates are still at the lowest rates since the district was created in the 1970s. The rates being proposed this evening are the same as those adopted by the Governing Board September 14th at the tentative budget public hearing. Therefore, the final South Florida Water Management District millage rates are as follows. District-wide, 0.0948 mil. By maintaining the same millage rate, this equates to an 11.53% increase or 98 cents per $100,000 of taxable value over the calculated rolled back millage rate of 0.0850. By maintaining the same millage rate, this also represents a 21.59% decrease in the district-wide millage rate over the past 5 years. Big Cypress Basin, 0.0978 mil. By maintaining the same millage rate, this equates to an 11.52% increase or $1 per $100,000 of taxable value over the calculated rolled back millage rate of 0.0877. By maintaining the same millage rate, this also represents a 20.55% decrease in the Big Cypress Basin millage rate over the past 5 years. Okeechobee Basin, 0.1026 mil. By maintaining the same millage rate, this equates to an 11.52% increase or $1.06 per $100,000 of taxable value over the calculated rolled back millage rate of 0.0920. By maintaining the same millage rate, this also represents a 21.68% decrease in the Okeechobee Basin millage rate over the past 5 years. Everglades Construction Project, 0.0327. By maintaining the same millage rate, this equates to an 11.6% increase or 34 cents per $100,000 of taxable value over the calculated rolled back millage rate of 0.0293. By maintaining the same millage rate, this also represents a 21.58% decrease in the Everglades Construction Project millage rate over the past 5 years. The total combined Big Cypress Basin millage rate of 0.1926 mil in the Big Cypress Basin, Collier, and a small portion of mainland Monroe counties, these rates represent $19.26 per $100,000 of taxable value. The total combined Okeechobee Basin millage rate of 0.2301 mil in the Okeechobee Basin, 15 of 16 counties, these rates represent $23.01 per $100,000 of taxable value. The district proposes maintaining the current millage rate to ensure mission-critical functions continue and support operations and maintenance of new and existing infrastructure within both basins of the district. The specific purposes for which ad valorem tax revenues are being increased are to support operations and maintenance of existing infrastructure and new Everglades restoration projects, to align recurring expenses with recurring revenues and fund additional costs of operations, maintenance, monitoring, land, and vegetation management of existing infrastructure and completed SERP, restoration strategies, and Northern Everglades projects turned over to operations. Mr. Chairman, I turn the meeting back over to you prior to considering the next 4 resolutions on the millage rates.
Well, thank you, Ms. Heater. Ms. Brown, as part of the governing board discussion and consideration of the 6 resolutions on the agenda, do we have public comments or questions pertaining to millage rates on the budget?
We do, Mr. Chairman. We have one public comment from Scott Hunt.
Not pertaining to the millage.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Mine's not pertaining. I didn't catch, if you were calling me to talk about the millage or not the millage.
Yeah, our public comment tonight is if you have any questions for us about the millage rate and our budget, if it pertains to that, you're more than welcome to comment. If you want to hold off, you're more than welcome to hold off to the next regular governing board meeting.
I would sure like to speak, but it's not about the millage.
If you're here, and go ahead, you can speak.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My name is Scott Hunt. I live in River Oak Acres adjacent to the Kissimmee River in Okeechobee. I'm here today because the Lower Kissimmee Stormwater Treatment Area project is going to create a tremendous hazard for aircraft flying into Okeechobee and an extreme hazard for the pilots of River Oak Acres and Sunset Strip Air Park. The FAA has an advisory circular that says you shouldn't build this type of facility within 5 miles of the airport operations area. At the county commission meeting in August, EIP's Kyle Graham told us the STA was outside that zone. This was a lie. As best we can tell, this project was contrived in Tallahassee. EIP shelled out millions of dollars for land without any agreements that were known to the public. Buying an enormous tract of land without any agreement or contract is extremely presumptuous. I just recently watched a video of the December 9th, 2021 meeting where you awarded the contract to EIP. In her presentation, Mrs. Jennifer Reynolds told you that the company had already done much of the Part 1A and possibly Part 1B work on the contract, but had not been paid yet. So they expended a few $1 million worth of work with no contract in hand. This is extremely presumptuous. More recently, I found a promotional video online promoting this project. In the video and in the description, it states that the contract was awarded in December 2021. The problem with this video is that it was uploaded to the hosting site on December 6th, 3 days before you voted on the contract on December 9th. Let me say that again. The video was uploaded 3 days before you voted. This is extremely presumptuous, and it gets better. Finally, if you watch the video closely, you can see where it states that not only did you vote, but you voted unanimously as you would vote 3 days later. Do you know how bad this looks? If you would like to see the video for yourself, and maybe the board members watching at home, you can see it at vimeo.com. That's vimeo.com/653-890-877. I would take a look before the company takes it down. And I've got a copy of the screenshot that shows that for your reference. I'll leave that with Mr. Bartlett. In the coming weeks, we'll be launching a campaign to educate you about the hazards that this project is creating. The aviation world will be watching. And finally, I just want to say that none of us in Okeechobee would ever do something that would create a hazard to you or your family like what this project is about to do to us. So, and the last thing I would say is Mr. Bartlett had an agreement with our commissioner at the August 29 meeting to allow Okeechobee County on the agenda to give a presentation, not just a 3-minute window. So we're still looking forward to seeing that on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Mr. Chairman, we have no additional public comments.
Thanks, Ms. Brown. Are there any board members who have comments or questions before we move on to consider the resolutions? Hearing none, board members, we're going to be voting on each resolution separately. I'm going to perform a roll call vote on each resolution, and we'll have Ms. Heater proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution 2023-0923, adopting the district-wide final millage rate of 0.0948 mil within the Okeechobee Basin and Big Cypress Basin of the South Florida Water Management District for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Thanks, Ms. Heater. Are there any board member comments or questions on this? Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, Butler, second.
I have a motion and a second on resolution 2023-0923. I'm going to If there's no further discussion, I'm going to call that question. I'll start with Vice Chair Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
yes,
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
yes,
Ms. Meads,
Yes.
Colonel Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Steinle.
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes, and that passes unanimously.
Resolution 2023-0924, adopting the Big Cypress Basin final millage rate of 0.0978 mil within the Big Cypress Basin of the South Florida Water Management District for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Thanks, Ms. Eder. Are there any board members who have comments or questions on this item? If not, could I have a motion?
Make a motion for resolution number 2023-0924.
Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Charlotte.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Steinle, second by Colonel Roman for 2023-0924. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call that question. Vice Chair Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
yes,
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
yes,
Ms. Meads,
Yes.
Colonel Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Steinle.
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and that passes unanimously.
Resolution 2023-0925, adopting the Okeechobee Basin final millage rate of 0.1026 mil within the Okeechobee Basin of the South Florida Water Management District for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Thanks, Ms. Eder. Are there any board members who have comments or questions? Can I have a motion on that?
Make a motion, resolution number 2023-0925.
Is there a second?
This is Cheryl.
One at a time?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. I have a motion by Mr. Steinle, a second by Mr. Bergeron for resolution 2023-0925. Is there further discussion by the board? Hearing none, I'll call that question. Vice Chair Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Ms. Martinez.
yes,
Thank you, Ms. Meads.
Yes.
Colonel Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Steinle.
Yes.
And I'm going to vote yes, that passes unanimously.
Resolution 2023-0926, adopting the Everglades Construction Project final millage rate of 0.0327 mil within the Okeechobee Basin of the South Florida Water Management District for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Thank you, Ms. Eder. Are there any board member comments or questions on this? Is there a motion?
Make a motion for resolution number 2023-0926.
Is there a second?
I'll second. That's Charlotte.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Steinle, a second by Colonel Roman on 2023-0926. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call that question. Vice Chair Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
yes,
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
yes,
Ms. Meads,
Yes.
Colonel Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Steinle.
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes, and that passes unanimously.
This portion of the presentation pertains to the fiscal year 2023-2024 final budget amount of $1,226,876,797 to be considered tonight for both revenues and expenditures. First, I'd like to highlight the changes that have been made to the budget from the tentative budget hearing. The budget has increased by $79.8 million from $1,147 million to $1,226.8 million. The majority of the changes are related to appropriated state revenues. We added new state appropriations approved by the Legislative Budget Commission and included reconciliation of prior year appropriations. The district also received $3.6 million pertaining to the state missions supporting Hurricane Ian debris removal in Lee County. In addition to the changes that impacted the bottom line illustrated on this slide, there were some administrative line item changes which are included as part of the detailed line item budget posted on the web. The pie charts to the left illustrate the revenues, ad valorem at 27% and state sources at 60%, which make up 87% of the revenues for the district. The pie chart to the right illustrates projected expenses by program, of which 90% of the budget continues to support restoration and operations and maintenance. Mr. Chair, I turn the meeting back over to you.
Thanks, Ms. Heater. Are there any board members who have comments or questions on this resolution? Hearing none, could I have a motion?
Make a motion for resolution number 2023-0927.
Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Charlotte.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Steinle, a second by Colonel Roman on 2023-0927. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that question. Vice Chair Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron.
yes,
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
Ms. Meads.
Yes.
Colonel Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Steinle.
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. That passes unanimously.
Thank you. In the final resolution tonight, staff presents for consideration Resolution 2023-0928. Recognize the General Appropriations Act and prior appropriations as enacted by the legislature of the state of Florida and subsequent budget amendment authorized by the Legislative Budget Commission pursuant to Chapter 216 Florida statutes in the South Florida Water Management District's fiscal year 2023-2024 adopted budget, authorizing the executive director of the South Florida Water Management District or designee to execute funding agreements with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and to request distribution, transfer, release, advance, and reimbursement of funds through September 30th, 2024.
Thanks, Ms. Heater. Does anyone have any questions on that? If not, could I have a motion?
Motion for resolution number 2023-0928.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Bergeron seconds. Mr. Steinle makes the motion. Is there further discussion on 2023-0928? Hearing none, I'll call that question. Vice Chair Wagner.
yes,
Mr. Bergeron.
Yes,
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
Ms. Meads.
Yes.
Colonel Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Steinle.
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes, and that passes unanimously. Ms. Heater, you're recognized.
Thank you, thank you. I do want to conclude with my portion of the presentation by thanking, the governing board as well as leadership, but most of all staff, budget staff and finance staff, and that have gotten us to this point. So thank you.
Well, thank you. You don't have to thank the governing board. We don't do a whole lot on this one, but you all do. Thanks very much. I know it's a lot of work, and I know you put a ton of time into it. This is a great budget, and it's going to take good care of us this year. You heard last governing board meeting, Mr. Bartlett laid out what we have in front of us this year, so it's going to be a busy one. We're looking forward to it, and thank you all very much for putting in the late hours and making it such a good budget. If we have nothing further, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thanks.